Greetings and welcome back to AP English and Room 303. We turn now in our Roberts text to page 772, Pablo Neruda's Every Day You Play, his 1924 offering. Neruda is one of our favorite poets in 303. We've also worked at LearnStrong.net with If You Forget Me, a poem in Roberts on page 809. Our dates here, 1904 to 1977. The great Chilean poet, he was also a diplomat. He's often considered the national poet of Chile with good cause. Nobel Prize in 1971. He started writing poetry at the age of 13. Now this poem comes from his great 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair from 1924. The Colombian novelist Marquez actually once said of Neruda that he's the greatest poet of the 20th century in any language. I think once we start working with Neruda, we begin to immediately see why. He's such a loved poet, and especially, of course, by our students in 303. Now, what makes Every Day You Play such a fascinating read is the question of the antecedent of the pronoun you. There's so many different ways to read this poem. Some of you will say this is one of the great love poems of all time, sitting up there with John Donne's Valediction Forbidding Mourning, a text that we've lectured elsewhere. Let's just read the poem. Do note at 2b, although we're not going to get into it a lot, the structure of the poem, the different levels of structure that Neruda's playing with. Some of the lines will have more than the number of lines from preceding stanzas and that kind of thing. Pay attention to his use of the word universe as well. Every day you play. Every day you play with the light of the universe, subtle visitor. You arrive in the flower and the water. You are more than this white head that I hold tightly as a cluster of fruit every day between my hands. You are like nobody since I love you. Let me spread you out among yellow garlands. Who writes your name in letters of smoke among the stars of the south? Oh, let me remember you as you were before you existed. Suddenly, the wind howls and bangs at my shut window. The sky is a net crammed with shadowy fish. Here all the winds let go sooner or later, all of them. The rain takes off her clothes. The birds go by, fleeing. The wind. I can contend only against the power of men. The storm whirls dark leaves and turns loose all the boats that were moored last night to the sky. You are here. Oh, you do not run away. You will answer me to the last cry. Cling to me as though you were frightened. Even so, at one time, a strange shadow ran through your eyes. Now, too, little one, you bring me honeysuckle, and even your breasts smell of it, while the sad wind goes slaughtering butterflies. I love you, and my happiness bites the plum of your mouth. How you must have suffered getting accustomed to me, my savage, solitary soul, my name that sends them all running. So many times we have seen the morning star burn, kissing our eyes, and over our heads the gray light unwind in turning fans. My words rained over you, stroking you. A long time I've loved the sunned mother of pearl of your body. I go so far as to think that you own the universe. I will bring you happy flowers from the mountains, bluebells, dark hazels, and rustic baskets of kisses. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees. Now, as I say, the power of this poem, and obviously it's a very sensual poem, yes? So you can go through and study all of the different adjectives that will make this such a powerful, sensual poem. But notice that the repetition of the word you obviously leads us to wonder who it is that he, of course, loves so well. In fact, he says he wants to remember this you as you were before you existed? Which is, of course, a really famous question in Zen and Buddhist koan types of poetry. What did you look like before your grandparents were born? It's a wonderful way to construct the idea of the depth of love that the speaker has for the lover. Notice we begin in the first stanza with every day you play with the light of the universe. And there's going to be a lot of playing in this poem and obviously a lot of references to light. So it works so well. Notice he'll call the visitor a subtle visitor that arrives in the flower and the water. In other words, in nature. In other words, notice we'll start with flower and water, we'll start with the universe, and we'll end with cherry trees at the end. And all along the way, the poet is playing games. The speaker is playing games with the idea of what nature can do. You're like nobody since I love you. And then the request, let me spread you out among yellow garlands. Who writes your name in letters of smoke among the stars of the south? It's the one question of the poem. And then, as we've said, let me remember you as you were before you existed. I've had seniors that say, that's one of the most compelling lines of poetry I've ever read. It's like I keep coming back to it and wanting to read it again. Then notice the movement of the poem. It kind of is ambulating slowly, and then all of a sudden, you get the word, suddenly. And then there's this power of the wind, and we're going to focus on the wind now in the third stanza. The wind howls, bangs at my shut window, the way in which love can find the way in, a crevice in. The sky is net crammed with shadowy fish. Can't help but think of the poem that we've studied, the two poems that address issues of the fish, but especially Marianne Moore's The Fish, right? Shadowy fish, hear all the winds let go sooner or later, the power of release, all of them. And then a wonderful image, the rain takes off her clothes, makes us think about some lines from E.E. Cummings, right? The birds go by fleeing, the wind, and then the repetition of the wind. The wind, I, and then notice the injunction here of I. I hold tightly is in the first stanza. I hold tightly as a cluster of fruit every day between my hands. Here it's I can control, I can contend only against the power of men. I can't, in other words, I cannot struggle against the force, the natural, beautiful force that is the lover, right? The storm whirls dark leaves and turns loose all the boats that were moored last night to the sky. And that's a beautiful image. Of course, if you're looking out at a harbor, it looks as if the boats are somehow attached to the skyline, right? And then here, and then here, presence is the next focus. You are here. Oh, do not run away. Right? So you have this interesting tension. It almost reminds us of Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. Come to the window, sweet as the night air. There's this sense of possible distance. You will answer me to the last cry. And then the verb cling. Cling to me as though you were frightened, even so at one time. A strange shadow ran through your eyes. And of course here now we're referencing past, right? The past relationship. When they first came together, there wasn't as much trust as maybe he is hoping there is now. But notice now, right? We're in the present moment. Now, and then the repetition of the word now, too. Little one, you bring me honeysuckle, and even your breasts smell of it. We can't help but think about Keats's bright star, right, and the idea of the lifting breast here in this reference. He says, while the sad wind, and so he's going to use the adjective sad for wind now, goes slaughtering butterflies, that is to say, pushing them all over the place. And then finally, notice, if this is a love poem, and most of you will read it as such, it takes quite a while to get there. Notice, I love you, and my happiness bites the plum of your mouth. Of course, plum is a great word because it works on so many levels, right? And then he'll finish the poem. How you must have suffered getting accustomed to me. And then he'll talk about himself and the fact that in the same way that these shut windows of earlier in the poem now, the savage solitary soul, my name that sends them all running. Of course, if you wish for the speaker of this poem to actually be Neruda himself, obviously, that is to say he's a poet of some reputation, right? So many times we've seen the morning star burn. kissing our eyes, and over our heads the gray light unwind in turning fans. In other words, we have a history. My words rained over you. So we're back to the rain takes off her clothes. Now we're the rain of words, right? Stroking you, a very sensual sexual word, right? A long time I have loved the sun, mother of pearl of your body. I go so far as to think that you own the universe. And here again, we're back to the opening lines of the light of the universe and the playing in the light of the universe. You are my world, in other words. I will bring you happy flowers from the mountains, bringing us back to the flowers in the second line of the poem. From the mountains, bluebells, dark hazels, and rustic baskets of kisses. This referencing to flowers and to love, we're always seeing this in poetry, aren't we? And then the final line that's, the final stanza that's actually a line that's broken. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees. The whole idea of blossoming, of coming alive, of resurrection is then how this poem ends. At 2a, obviously, love is nature's maybe greatest gift is one possible message. Obviously, at 2b, the imagery and the symbolism of this poem is quite remarkable. Notice the diction as well, the strange shadow that he will call that ran through your eyes. At 3a, what for you are the poems or texts that come to mind here? We can't help but think of a poem, or any number of poems from Whitman's Leaves of Grass that will play similar kinds of games. And Neruda and Whitman often are read together for obvious reasons. Finally, at 3b, what is your best attempt at what we might call a natural relationship? And how would you describe that natural relationship? And what do you make of this line, oh, let me remember you as you were before you existed? In other words, before you ever were born, or before we ever met, or before the relationship that became somehow fundamentally a new you and a new me. Well, I hope that a study of a poem like this leads you to more Neruda. Is truly amazing, gifted poet. Thank you.